Have you ever thought about why wealth accelerates over $100,000 once you hit it in savings? Well, I've done that, and I've done more than that, and you've seen me do it on this YouTube channel, so I wanted to talk about it. I've been thinking about it for a minute, and I was wondering, like, why was it when I got to that certain point that everything just changed? And I'm going to tell you my thought process. I'm going to label it down that maybe if you're struggling out there or you're trying to figure out how to get there, because nobody taught me how to do this, and if this helps one person, it's all that really matters. I had some time and I figured I'd make this video. There are some elements to it, and there's some truths and there's some not truths, because a lot of people out there talking about this has not actually done it. But since I've done it, I thought, hey, let's talk about it. Let's get right into it. See, 0 to 100K takes discipline, takes repetition, it takes consistency, it takes a mentality. When I first started saving, I had just got my first job. I happened to be in the Army. And immediately when you commission in the Army, they'll give you a commissioning loan. And you can go out and buy that BMW. And I was like, this sounds like a trap. And I chose not to do it. I drove my old beater red truck that I had since I was 16 for many years after I got my first job. And I started realizing I was developing these habits of saving money. And I had a cheap apartment with a roommate. I think my half was like $300 a month. And I just decided things I didn't need, I just didn't buy, and I had, everything I needed, and I just kept saving and saving and saving. I remember they denied me for my first credit card, and I was like, but do I actually need it? No, I thought that was odd. I didn't have any credit because I was trying to get credit, and they denied me. It was USAA, it was wild. But they denied me. It was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. I just kept using my debit card. And that's also a misnomer. Having a bunch of credit cards is not going to make you wealthy. It's just, can help you sometimes get some cash back, but it really wasn't important to get to 100,000. So what I did is I developed this habit of saving 50% of my income, 40% of my income, then 60, and then 70, and I kept my lifestyle the same. I didn't allow lifestyle creep as I made more money and to raise my standard of living. And I saw most of my peers did that. When they made first lieutenant, captain, they got a bigger house, they got an apartment by themselves, they got a fancy car. And I realized when I would talk to them, they're like, I don't have any money. But they had a fancy house and a fancy car, but they had loans. They had loans. I remember I saved, and I deployed. And I don't remember how much I had saved when I deployed. It was like maybe 50 grand, 60 grand. Came home and I bought me a truck cash. And I realized this was the first time that I had taken a real hit to my savings. I think I dropped from like less than 100. It took me like 4 or 5 years to get to 100 grand. But it dropped me down to like 70. And I was like, you know what? I need to get back on a savings plan. And I just kept saving. And finally, I got back to 100 grand. I'll say this about paying for my truck. Yeah, I bought a new truck. I paid cash for it. But it was also buying an asset. That truck has made me more money than I ever paid for it times 5. It allowed me to start my YouTube channel, haul kayaks, flip houses, renovate things, haul trash off, go to Home Depot 5 times in one day because I forgot the same part that I needed from the day before. It was something that when I say stack capabilities in your life, everything that I have bought has been a capability. I would invest in tools. I would invest in a lot of things, like learning how to use the tools. I learned how to do everything from the math on underwriting a deal to hammering nails and using a skill saw and doing tile and hanging sheetrock. I invested in my ability to constantly up my income the best I could. But I had no credit card debt, like eating away at my income. I had no home mortgage. I was eating away with my income. And I was still bouncing around, so I didn't need a house. And I think that saved on me up front was having a cheap apartment, living someplace for very cheap until I knew where I was going and where I was going to settle down. I was like 25 years old. But this entire time, I had my money in a savings account. I had it in the stocks. I had it in a S&P 500 account, and it was growing. And this was right after the 2008 recession. Things were coming back, so I got like a crazy return on some of my money. I think that in the S&P 500, I got like 30% over those years, and it helped grow. And once you get 100 grand, it's finally the biggest, it's finally a big enough amount of money that you can start taking some big leaps. Okay. By this time you've probably gotten a car. It's probably not a crazy good car, but a good car. I had bought a Toyota Tacoma, the one I still have to this day, like 15 years later. Bought it for like $25,000, and I still have it. It was paid for, and I had this sum of money that was still churning out money. When I got out of the Army, I started investing in real estate. I was able to buy a house cash. I was able to actually, how I did this, I bought this house and I got a small mortgage on it for like a year. I wanted to learn how to get real estate, so I went ahead and got a mortgage. And I bought it, and I knew the house was worth a lot more. I was able to get into a property and build out a humongous amount of equity in the property. The house today is probably worth $350. Bought it for $67, undervalued. It was in rough shape. You can see me renovate this house on this channel, and it catapulted me. I took 67. Actually, I took. You could say this. Actually, I put the 20% of the 67 down, and then the 67 was probably really worth at the time $150, and then now, since the housing explosion, that $150 is probably worth $350. Okay, and you see how that kind of happens? That it explodes. That cash, that amount of wealth is enough to take bigger swings. And then once I did that, I started investing in this channel. I started investing in my own business, and then I started a real estate sales business, and then I kept flipping houses. And every time this channel would make 50 grand, I'd buy a house. I did that 3-4 more times. And then once I filtered out of that, after they rented for 4 years, I bought another flip house, and I made 100 grand on that. Okay. And what I'm trying to show you is that once you get above the standard of living, and that your standard of living, your lifestyle creep does not keep creeping with your cash, to where if you sustain a financial injury, say you lose your job, like me, I had to get out of the Army because, they were downsized, a lot of things happened, that I had enough money to survive and not inflict any injury on my investments. I could keep investing. My lifestyle was still small. And even after I got money, my lifestyle was still the same. So like, let's say you make $300,000 or $400,000 in a year, and your bills are 20. It doesn't take a long time to get there, okay? Granted, when I got out of the Army, I was making very little until I got my business going, but I was able to take that risk until I could do what I'm doing now. And it was the greatest thing ever. It allowed me to take risks, allowed me to take new adventures, and that's one thing you got to really understand. And I talked about it in another video, which I just shot, about why millionaires look poor, is because they put everything into their investments, everything into their future and developing themselves. They don't let what other people think distract them. See, the mastery of money and money-making skills is another thing you do along the way to 100,000. 0 to 10, you're learning to save and discipline. 10 to 50, you're learning, how to buy a car and pay it down, and kind of learning about credit cards and a little bit about investing and debit cards and banking. And then when you get somewhere close to 100 grand, you've got a brokerage account, you're figuring about real estate, you're learning about down payments. And then you'll see when you get from 100 to a million, you've got a whole different criteria of problems. You've got the tax man. You can't put it all in one bank account. You learn about FDIC limits. You learn about a lot of things. And you're learning about business, and you're learning how to diversify and create multiple streams of income. And then it really starts to go faster after that, because you've got so many things making money. And instead of just your income making you money, you've got 5 different things making you money. Remember, compound interest is something that will sneak up on you, whether it's in the form of a credit card interest or it's in the form of your brokerage account or your bank account making you money at 5, 6, 8%. That it will stack up fairly quickly until you wake up and you're getting $50,000 check at the end of the year for something you didn't even remember you owned. But remember, the eighth wonder of the world is not compound interest for money. It's compound numbers. That's what Einstein said. People get that wrong all the time. And last one thing I want to talk about is when you've got a savings account, an emergency fund, as Dave Ramsey would say, whether it's 10, 15, 5, whatever it is, you've got the ability to breathe like I talked about earlier. When you have a financial injury, it's not going to take you out of the investment world. You don't have to liquidate your rental property. You don't have to liquidate your brokerage account. You just take the lump, you'll find another job, whatever it may be, and you just keep moving. And you don't have to mess with all your different investments. You can afford to go out and actually learn that new adventure, learn that new business, and then that might catapult you, leaps and bounds ahead like it did for me. What you'll notice really is that once you can take sizable ventures, sizable amounts of secondary income, whether it's the form of interest or it's the form of flipping a house where you're making $20,000, $50,000, $100,000 gains. Now you're making sizable movement. And you really can't do that under $10,000 or under $50,000 because you're still paying for your life. You have to have a car, you have to have a place to live, you got to have food, and you've got expenses. But once you get above that and you're able to have some money to work with, well, money makes money. And once you have enough above your ceiling, and you can hold off on that new car or hold off on that extra expense for a Rolex to impress somebody that probably doesn't even like you. Now all of a sudden you can make some leaps and bounds. Because think about it. I paid $67,000 for this house. And the down payment was like, I don't know, 15 or something. That's the price of a Rolex. And if I would have bought a Rolex when I had $120,000, okay, I probably wouldn't have had this house that would have made me an extra $275,000, after this whole thing, shook out. Plus, I rented it for a year. Think about it. I wouldn't have owned those houses I owned on the other side of town, the two next door to each other. If I would have bought me a Rolex, which those two houses over doubled in value, and I rented them for 3 years, look at the money I would have sacrificed by trying to look rich. Comment down below if you've got an adventure you want to share, and if you're stuck in a rut, well, maybe this can help you. Just don't do debt, learn new skills, constantly be disciplined about your finances. Don't listen to all those naysayers and people making fun of your clothes. Stay consistent, and you can get to $100,000. It may take you a couple more years, but 2 to 5, 5 to 8, whatever, you can get there. But once you get to 100,000, it goes pretty quick. 1 to 2, well, that's simple. But that's it. I'll see you guys in the next video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you later.